Okay, for those in attendance, the board
Oh,
discussed.
sorry, Gord, we're not live yet. Or Jeff, sorry.
Okay.
Zoom takes a little bit to convert.
Oh, okay.
Okay, now we're live.
For those in attendance, the board discussed a confidential trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that belongs to the municipality or local board and has monetary value or potential monetary value matters. This would involve broker relations, trade negotiations and trade strategies, execution, and timelines for investment and trade performance. There were no votes taken during the closed portion of the meeting with the exception of the procedural motion to move into open session. I'd like to move on now to the second item on the agenda. Item 2.2, environmental, social, and governance, bracket ESG, integration into the investment decision-making process. And Thierry, I think this is where I hand it off to you.
Thank you, Jeff.
And would you like me to share the screen again, Barry?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Full screen.
Do you want me at the next screen? There we go.
No, full screen.
Oh.
Go back to yes, the motion, and then
Dara, we don't see
you show
the.
your.
You don't see that.
We see two screens. We need the
Oh, I
one.
went to the, okay.
slideshow.
Sorry. No,
Still the same. So we see two slides.
it worked the last time. It's pause. Of course, it does this on the live, right?
Chair is not alone.
Sorry, I'm just starting from the beginning again here. Okay.
There you go.
Is that one screen or is it got the-
We need slideshow version.
Not from the beginning. Okay.
That's okay. She
No,
whipped
you-
just
okay,
whipped
right.
through quick.
Okay, but yes, perfect. Okay, thank you, Tara.
Sorry.
So, no worries. So after our last meeting, we went to council to present the annual investment report, and then there was a motion by council for the board to look at the possibilities or the feasibility of having integrating ESG factors into the decision-making process. Okay, next slide, please. And report back to them in 2022. So what we try to, there is a, just kind of as a background, the CFA Institute has published a document back in 2018, kind of looking at the same issues because it's timely, it's coming, it's becoming more prevalent. So as the, in order to help practitioners, so they did a study, a global study, looking at fixed income and equities and trying to provide some guideline and some do's and don'ts in terms of, and come up with a framework in terms of ESG integration. Next slide, please. So one of the, now these are excerpts from that study, and just as we start looking at this in terms of discussion, so just kind of some of the learnings that the point that they've kind of learned through the report was that the first one is like, okay, what ESG integration is not. So ESG integration does not mean that investment in certain sectors, country, and company are prohibited. So investment return are not to be sacrificed in order to perform ESG integration techniques. And immaterial ESG factors affect investment decisions that traditional financial factors ignore. Or there shouldn't be any major changes in your investment process in order to have ESG integration. Next slide, please. So sorry, I think there was a change in the slide order. So this was supposed to be the slide before, just kind of introducing what the study was. But this gives a little bit of context of how wide and how broad this study was. And it was, again, as I was mentioning, it was a global study, and they surveyed about 1,100 financial professional CFAs around the globe. So 23 workshops in 17 major markets. So it was really broad. And then they looked at different, over different continents, and then looking at equities and fixed income. So it was really well done in terms of research. Next slide, please. So they came up with this framework, which is it's basically 3 levels of ESG integration. So the first level is research. So research kind of goes into it covers a little bit the qualitative analysis. And if we look at, for example, the typical company questionnaire that some people use as a screen is, kind of falls under this first level of research. So, if you have the chance to talk to companies and, ask them questions and so on and so forth. So it's really a little bit of qualitative analysis, and then some to deal with controls as well. So for example, voting rights are here. So whereby you are like either a majority shareholder, and then you have some type of, you can exert some type of influence into the company. So the second level is security evaluation. It's kind of a little bit above that qualitative and control level. So it goes into your financial forecasting, your duration analysis for fixed income securities. And then the third level is kind of at the portfolio level. So at the portfolio level, whereby you're making risk management decision from a macro perspective, you're doing strategic allocation. So then wherever you can have tools like ESG profile versus what your benchmark, i.e. the portfolio profile versus the benchmark. You can do a scenario analysis whereby you look at your portfolio and you can test it against let's say some global events, or perhaps an oil spill and things of that nature, right? So this is really more about from a macro perspective. And then at this level, I guess you have quite a bit of data as well to work with. So this is the kind of the overall framework that came out of that study. Now it's not rigid, they say in the study, it's just kind of a guideline, a way to think about how ESG integration could be implemented. But again, it is very customizable, and then you have to really apply it to your unique situation. And again, if you look at this, company questionnaires would kind of fail, be at this level. Next slide, please. So these are, again, the 3 levels. So the research level, and whereby you have the information gathering, where the questionnaires would kind of fall under. And then you have the active ownership assessment, whereby you have some level of control, and then you can directly, influence the company's decision making. And then, you can monitor, you have access to information. So the second level, again, security and portfolio analysis sphere. And then the final, where we think the CDE would probably be able to, somehow utilize, which is kind of at the decision making level, so i.e. from the portfolio perspective, whereby you can monitor your portfolio, again, using some available data to see where you plot against a benchmark, and then have some scenario that you can run against the portfolio. And next slide, if any. Yes, so that was also, I just wanted to kind of provide this as the background from why we're talking about ESG and some of the kind of the world class, I guess, framework that exists that might help guide the discussion.
Thank you, Thierry. So we're going to be doing, after you have completed a little more research on ESG, we'll be doing some updates on the investment policy statement and the investment program. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we promise to get back to them in 2022. However, I think we have it'll be definitely an item for investment policy review, annual review, which is, I think, if my memory serves me well, it's supposed to be sometime in November. So it is something we can start working on to be added to the investment policy statement.
Okay. Any other comments from?
Yeah, one thing I would suggest that might be interesting to look at is what OMERS is doing as far as ESG, because I assume from the city of Barrie point of view, pensions assets with OMERS are significantly larger than this portfolio. So if they're looking at managing ESG impacts, that's a bigger number to start with. But I doubt there's much influence there. So, but I think nonetheless, I think it'd be interesting to see what they're doing, like to what level they're able to do things at this point.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead. Correct.
sorry, I was just gonna say, I mean, I know in the accounting world, they're still looking at the reporting of ESG and what that looks like on statements and going forward. So I almost, again, with our portfolio of choices that we're using ETFs, it's fairly limited as to what's realistic for us and where we want to go. So I think we'll have to, as we look at this more, I think it'll have to be a practical element to it that we'll have to bring forward to council, and an education that this is an evolution, but for the overall industry, but particularly for Barrie as well, our options are fairly small, and our impact would be fairly small.
That's a very good point. And given that we're using ETFs, I mean, you don't have a lot of choice there in terms of the exposures that you want to get. So although I have worked with people in the past on some ESG techniques, and one of the things that they did was, especially when applying to the Canadian market, given that it had such a huge resource and extraction factor, was they would rank each sector for the companies that were doing the best job they possibly could, down to the worst, and would only select sort of the top quarter or 20% as saying, these ones, at least they're trying to do something about it, but the industry they're in, unfortunately, it just leads them to be on that sort of bad side of the ledger for environment. But it's a necessary thing, but at least they're doing all the things they possibly can. And I know one of the ones that they cited was Suncor, even though that sounds not good. That was one of the ones at the time that they were recommending. So, but yeah, it's a very tricky situation, as you point out, Craig, that, how do you make sure that you do the best you can for the portfolio and at the same time try and meet these specific targets for ESG that some people would prefer to have in place. The practicalities of it are somewhat difficult.
Yeah, the evaluation criteria could difficult to come to consensus on, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yes, and on that point, as Craig is mentioning, like even for people, more and more we start seeing companies that are specializing in ranking companies and providing a score. But so the way to view some of the difficulties, like well, it's ESG, right? There's three main bucket. You may find a company that is really has a very good governance, but unfortunately is in a sector that may not be considered a good, environment. A sector that may have just the sector itself, a low score with that, right? So, but they're definitely doing very well in the G and the S, but unfortunately, so how do you come to rank such a company, right? So it is definitely it is difficult even for companies trying to come up with a score for companies and rank them, because which one do you outweigh? You say that takes is 50% of the source is 70%, and then you give a lesser score away to the government or the E, or do you so it's just it's a balancing act even for those companies trying to come up with a ranking.
Okay. Any other discussion on this topic?
Just
Okay.
Just next steps, Thierry, so I understand. So, and stop me if we talk about this at the end, but so we ultimately were asked to look at this and report back, and if we're making changes to the investment plan, we would bring that forward. So ideally, we're probably shooting for March, April 2022, right? So is the idea then we're going to come back in the next meeting with sort of approach, if at any, or adjustments to the plan or opportunities for adjustments for this group to consider?
That's correct. So really, it's from now till then is really just kind of see what first how what the language and how it can be structured and integrated into the investment policy. And of course, if it has any impact on investment plan, then that would be as well. So really what we're looking from the group is collectively be able to come up with some language that supports the ESG integration into the investment decision making process. So I'll share all the background information that I have. I'll share that report as well, and then but again, the goal is really to be able to, as you mentioned, when you go back to council next year, to come up with an updated policy, if any.
Yeah. Okay, and I think probably education will be a big part of that,
Yeah.
that piece to council. Okay.
It might be worth, given that we're invested in ETFs, it might be worth looking at all the ETFs that we hold and see if there's a ESG filtered equivalent available in the market and what the fee difference is with those, just as a starting point to say this would be the easiest first step. Is it even possible? How much more is it going to cost us? And is that going to achieve what council would want to achieve from an ESG perspective?
Yeah, I think it's a great suggestion. Okay, so Thierry and Jason, you guys are gonna start kind of spending a little time on that piece of it, analyzing what we have and what the cost is. Okay.
And I would say if anyone comes across examples of good ESG policy language or whatever, I would encourage you to pass it along to Thierry and Jason, just so, if they have something to think about, someone else is implementing at the time. Not that we're going to copy it entirely, but it just helps you think through what you need to, what we're going to need to do here. So, okay. You done? I would guess so. All right. I see we have no referred items for discussion here today. And I don't see any reports to committee. Does anyone else have any comments prior to closing the investment meeting? Any inputs? All right. This completes the investment board meeting agenda, and the investment board is adjourned. Thank you very much, gentlemen and lady. It's been a technological challenge a little bit today, but we got through it. So thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Right,
Bye-bye.
see y'all. Bye-bye.
All right.